Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the brilliant yet incredibly complicated story of one of football's most fascinating figures. We're going to explore the life of Michel Platini. Now, this is a man whose career, both on and off the pitch, reads honestly like a dramatic novel. I mean, it's filled with absolute sporting poetry, devastating tragedy, and eventually a highly complex administrative scandal. The genius who arrived before the game dead. Wow, what a quote, right? It perfectly nails who Michel Platini was. You see, he was a man who didn't rely on raw speed or physical power. Instead, he anticipated the game moments before it actually happened. It was like he lived in the future, while defenders were just stuck in the present, finding spaces on the pitch before anyone else even realized those spaces existed. Part 1. The ultimate number 10, a lost art in the modern game. To really get his genius, we have to look at the era that made it possible. Back in the 1980s, the two-point system for a win meant teams basically prioritized avoiding defeat. This naturally created a slower, much more strategic game with plenty of room for creative freedom. The transition to the modern three-point system, well, that changed everything. The modern game demands high pressing, physical intensity, and constant speed. It essentially forced playmakers to become high-end endurance athletes rather than pure artists. Because things were just slower back then, Platini didn't need to be a physical powerhouse. He relied entirely on timing and intelligence. He had this knack for arriving late in spaces just before they mattered, rather than fighting for them with physical force. So his tactical environment at clubs like Juventus was actually shaped around his mind. The system allowed other players to absorb the physical burden so he could just orchestrate the match. And this dynamic is perfectly captured by a really famous exchange. When asked by Juventus owner Gianni Agnelli if the rumors of him smoking at halftime were actually true, Platini replied, "Sir, the important thing is that Massimo Bonini doesn't smoke. He's the one who has to run." It's such a great response, and it perfectly highlights his disarming personality and his absolute understanding of his highly specific, non-running role on the team. Part 2. France's Magic Square, the romantic era of midfield poetry. These four players fit together like a giant puzzle to create a perfectly balanced unit. You had Platini as the complete playmaker and decisive goal scorer. Then there was Giresse acting as the intelligent creator. You had Tigana providing relentless box-to-box energy, so again, Platini didn't have to. And finally, Fernández holding it down as the defensive anchor. They operated with this highly intuitive, highbrow passing style that made them the neutral fans' absolute favorite team to watch. All of this romantic football culminated in one staggering number, 9. That represents the unbroken record of goals he scored in just 5 matches during the 1984 European Championship. His Euro 84 run was just absolute mastery. We're talking a winning goal against Denmark, a hat-trick in a 5-0 thrashing of Belgium, and then, if you can believe it, another hat-trick against Yugoslavia. He had a late extra-time brace in the semifinal against Portugal, and finally broke the deadlock with a free kick in the final against Spain. He single-handedly dictated the entire rhythm of the tournament, literally carrying France to their first major international success. So it's really no surprise that his unmatched dominance earned him 3 consecutive Ballon d'Or awards in 1983, 1984, and 1985. I mean, he wasn't just the best player in the world at that time. He was effectively untouchable. He was deciding the matches that defined entire seasons at both the club and international levels. Part 3. Heartbreak in Seville, the dramatic collision of romance and pragmatism. This match right here serves as the ultimate dramatic fulcrum of his career. West Germany scores early, but Platini quickly equalizes with a penalty. Then, at the 60th minute, a horrific incident occurs when German keeper Schumacher collides with Francis Mbattenstein. Despite the extreme trauma of that moment, the game pushes into extra time. France actually takes a 2-goal lead, only for West Germany to tie it back up and eventually win on penalties. It was the ultimate test of France's poetic style against relentless physical German efficiency. The fallout from that 60th minute collision was literally devastating. French defender Patrick Battiston suffered broken ribs, spinal damage, and lost 2 teeth. Yet, remarkably, German goalkeeper Harald Schumacher faced absolutely no reprimand from the referee, not even a yellow card. This infamous incident remains one of the most painful moments in World Cup history, leaving a permanent emotional scar on that beautiful French team. Part 4. Triumph and Tragedy, the grim realities that ended a career. Switching gears back to his club career, his time in turn with Juventus was phenomenally successful. We're looking at a massive haul of trophies. 2 Serie A titles, a Coppa Italia, a Cup Winners' Cup, an Intercontinental Cup, and a European Cup. He basically turned a domestic powerhouse into a true international juggernaut. Juventus owner Gianni Agnelli famously summed up his value by saying, "We bought Platini for a pittance. Then he topped it off with foie gras." It's a great line, and it perfectly captures the pure elegance and the unexpectedly immense value he brought to Italian football. Right, we do have to shift gears here because the narrative took a very dark turn at the 1985 Hazel Stadium disaster. Tragically, 39 people lost their lives before the European Cup final between Juventus and Liverpool even began. This horrific event permanently overshadowed what really should have been the crowning achievement of his career. He actually scored the winning penalty in that very match, but the tragedy completely stripped the joy of the sport away from him. It directly led to his retirement just 2 years later at the incredibly young age of 32. The image of him celebrating that penalty remains an uncomfortable intersection of football and grim reality, forever complicating his on-pitch legacy. Part 5. A Complex Legacy. The shift from football royalty to administrative controversy. Looking at the timeline here, we see a really rapid descent from being the presumed next leader of world football straight into a maze of legal battles. In 2011, Platini received a controversial payment from FIFA. By 2015, his bid for the FIFA presidency was completely derailed by the resulting scandal. And fast forward to today in 2026, Platini has filed lawsuits against current FIFA president Gianni Infantino. And he's actively fighting back. He is suing Gianni Infantino in the French courts right now, alleging a criminal conspiracy was hatched to block his 2015 presidency. He's claiming false accusation and influence peddling against former FIFA officials, stating very clearly that he was the victim of a coordinated internal maneuver to remove him from the race. Now, it is absolutely important to note the results of the Swiss investigations. Platini faced a long-running criminal action by Swiss prosecutors regarding that 2011 payment. However, he was completely cleared. The authorities failed to convict him 3 separate times. But, despite that, the immense damage to his reputation had already been done. So when you look at the whole picture, the story of Michel Platini is just a total enigma. On one hand, he is the embodiment of an idyllic, cerebral era of football, but that is deeply contrasted by the harsh tragedies and bitter boardroom battles of his later life. You really cannot untangle the beautiful poetry of his play from the complicated realities of his life off the pitch. Which leaves us with one massive question. How should history actually remember him? As the ultimate footballing genius who arrived before the game did, or as a symbol of the sport's deeply flawed modern administration? I'll leave you to weigh his undeniable magic against the controversies of his later years. It's a truly fascinating puzzle that ultimately defines his legacy. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.